December 15th, 1995, the date that changed Japanese RPGs forever, when the first Final Fantasy game was released. I'm just kidding. It was Tales of Phantasia. The Tales of series is the classic example of a cult hit. JRPGs are niche enough, but the Tales of series has, in general, been considered to be in the shadow of the much more mainstreamed Final Fantasy, as well as, Dragon Quest, and Chrono Trigger, and Phantasy Star, and Persona, and Kingdom Hearts. You know what? Let's just move on.
Now, as longtime fans of the Tales series, we decided to do a retrospective on it. And let's just say we went about the wrong way. Now, since then, we have gotten a few comments asking when the next episode of the retrospective will come out. Here's one, and here's another, and here's 10 more. Well, don't worry, we are going to continue with our Tales of Retrospective. Just start over from scratch, a little leaner, a little more focused, and with better audio quality. I mean, have you seen our first Tales of Phantasia video? Jeez, what was that even all about?
But we're also going to do a top 10 facts list as we go through all the main games and give some interesting tidbits of information on them. So be sure to let us know what you think, and if you would like us to continue with this. To kick things off, we have Tales of Phantasia, the OG of the Tales series, which hit Japanese consoles in December of '95. So where else would be better to start this new batch of Tales videos than with the very first game?
Before any smartass says anything, yes, we're ripping this off from What Culture. What of it?
That being said, you're watching the BrotherhoodGaming.com, and these are the 10 facts about Tales of Phantasia. Number 10. It was based on a novel. Talk about humble beginnings. So it all started off with the lead game developer Yoshiharu Gotanda, who wrote a novel that went unpublished called Tale Phantasia, which included artwork by Yoshiaki Inagaki. The novel was essentially told in 3 acts, as it follows the actions of Daos the Demon King and his actions on the world of Asalia. The first act is told from the point of view of Winona Pickford, who fell in love with him. The second act is from the point of view of Rhea Scarlet, who witnesses Daos' destructive actions, and the final act in the story is done through the eyes of a swordsman that would be the basis for Kless. Many of the main cast of the game would become the basis for the main cast of Phantasia. It's just their names that were changed. And why? Bowman the Bowshooter and Temple the Clergy are awesome names. The game's story itself leaves out the first act entirely, abridges the second, and mostly uses the third. Many aspects of the original story would be changed, however, which would lead to friction with the game's publisher. Most notably, the title of the game, from Tale Phantasia to Tales of Phantasia. I guess the adding of the word of makes it sound more epic, I guess.
Number 9, it introduced the linear motion battle system. So RPGs beforehand were best known for using turn-based battle systems. Pretty much when an enemy encounter occurred, the players and the computer would engage in a game of duck duck goose, taking turns when attacking, and being nice enough to let you get your harpoon after you toss it at your enemies. All jokes aside, it is a perfectly fine battle system for what it is, but Wolf Team decided to change the game, with the linear motion battle system, better known as the LMBS. The linear aspect allows for characters on the screen to move back and forth and interact with enemy characters, making it more akin to a fighting game like Street Fighter. Now, with this being its first appearance, the developers were handcuffed to the technology at the time. When casting spells or other big moves are made, there would be a momentary stop in action known as a spell pause. This was due to the stress on the animation. So while this version isn't the best by a long shot, it did lay the groundwork, with other Tales games that came after making their own modifications and adding new features, allowing the system to continue to expand. The LMBS would be one of the Tales series' most iconic standouts.
Number 8. Enix turned it down. So, as we all know, the Tales series are trademarks owned by Namco. Before Phantasia came along, they were best known for being the arcade guys with solid hits like Pac-Man, Galaga, Dig Dug, and Rally X. But they had not been really known for anything in the role-playing genre. So, Tales of Phantasia was a big step forward in their portfolio. But did you know that Namco was not the first choice? Before going with them, Yoshiharu Gotanda and friends pitched the idea for Phantasia to Enix. Yes, that Enix. However, they ended up turning the project down. Now, Enix, up to that point, had been publishing the Dragon Quest series, which debuted on the original Nintendo. so at first glance, it seemed like the ideal spot for Tales. But at last, it wasn't meant to be. Later on, in 2003, Enix would then merge with fellow competitor to form Square Enix. So it's really funny to think that the Tales of series could have been under the same umbrella as Final Fantasy. Food for thought.
Number 7. It features music composed by Motoi Sakuraba. So chances are, if you're a Tales fan, you are familiar with Motoi Sakuraba, as his music has been used in Tales games since the very beginning. Starting his music career in 1985 in the rock band Clashed Ice, Sakuraba would be a composer for Wolf Team starting in 1989 and would go on to compose music for many Tales series games. He also worked on several Nintendo titles such as Mario Golf, Mario Tennis, and the Super Smash Bros. Games. But it is his work with the Tales games that have been his crown jewel in the video game world, as Sakuraba continued his efforts even with Wolf Team morphed into Namco Tales Studio. Name your favorite track, and most likely it was composed by him. He gave the Tales series its musical voice, its soundtrack. It all started here with Tales of Phantasia, and it continues on to this very day.
Number 6. It was the only Super Famicom game to have an original vocalized theme song. So, Tales of Phantasia for its time really pushed the technology that was available to it to its absolute limits. In fact, full voice acting was a major reason for the development team using the 48 megabit game cartridge. But nowhere can a better example be found than within the opening theme song, The Dream Will Not End, The Spilling Drops of Time. It is still incredible to hear this song to this day, considering that this came out on a 16-bit console. Not only that, but it would be the only one of its kind, making it one of the big achievements of its day. Unfortunately, like most vocal Tales theme songs, when it came out to the West, it was replaced. On the Game Boy Advance version and the English one, it uses a slightly remixed version of the world map theme, which admittedly was pretty lame. But in any event, Phantasia back then pushed the limits to create something unique. Honestly, the series could use some of that nowadays.
Number 5. The iOS version was American audiences would not get a chance to play Tales of Phantasia until the Game Boy Advance version came out in 2006. Now, despite the Advance being a good handheld system, it was clearly limited compared to the home console. The game was filled with weird translations, like Kless being called Cress, or Ragnarok being changed to Kangaroo. I'm sorry, what? And there was also rearranged music and hilariously bad voice acting. But it was golden compared to the iOS version. In 2013, Namco, looking for a quick money grab, ported Phantasia to iOS phones. It is bad enough that the gameplay is crap, having to move your finger around the screen to move your character, yeah, that's fun. But the game needs an always online connection just to be playable, and in turn, many of the save points were removed. However, the chief offense is that even though the game was free to play, its difficulty was really cranked up. It really encourages visiting the shop to use real money to buy miracle orbs to make the adventure easier to experience. Not surprisingly, the game was discontinued 1 year later.
Number 4. It's easy to miss a crucial item for the final castle. When you finally make it to Douse's castle for the final showdown, guess what? You already messed up. How? Why? Because the moment you step through the front door, you fall into a trap that immediately sends you to the dungeon. Now, you can make your way out of it, but you cannot cross this magic symbol unless you find a Darius emblem. After you do, you then equip it to one of your characters, which prevents them from being transported to the dungeon. Your one character can now find the rest of the Darius emblems for your entire group, allowing them all to progress. Now, your first instinct would be to search the immediate area that you're in to, find a secret room that may contain a Darius emblem in it, but nope, it isn't there. So where the heck can I get one before I even head to the trap? Oh, I don't know, try maybe the coffee shop in the town just before Douse's castle? Really, you have to talk to this random guy who just happens to have one. What is crazy is that the game makes no effort to tell you this. This is the height of cryptic. I am off to save the world from a mad demigod, but I first have to stop at my local Starbucks to chat with a random NPC to get a critical item I don't know I need, and don't know if I have, or need it to be equipped just to get through this stupid trap.
Number 3. It's funny fan translations. With some Tales games not getting a true English port, some fans have taken upon themselves to allow us non-Japan living folks to experience these Tales games in their full original glory. And sometimes they would have a little fun with it. The most famous of these translations for Phantasia came from DJAP. During the sea trip to Albanista, Archie passes out after drinking too much beer and loudly fantasizes about having hardcore sex with Kless. Hey, I don't blame her, so have we. But more famous was Clark's line, "I bet Archie f***s like a tiger." And there was also Archie commenting on Mint's gigantic breasts. Now to be fair, the original Japanese version did have hints of sexual innuendo in the original script, but there it's far more subtle. DJAP was just way more explicit. In the Japanese version, Clark doesn't mention sex at all when talking about Archie. Instead, he just says that she is very energetic, which may be a Japanese way of saying that she can like a tiger. I don't know, I'll have to look into it. Oh, and by the way, in the Japanese version, Mint can get the Boing-chan title, referring to her big bouncing boobs. So the sexual implications were always there. It was just highlighted a little more by DJAP to satisfy our perverted Western minds.
Number 2, its creators would go on to make Star Ocean. So the development of Tales of Phantasia was not really a happy one, thanks to their constant butting heads with their Namco overlords. This caused much of Phantasia's development team to pack their bags and move on out. Eventually, they would form their own company with blackjack and hookers, called Tri-Ace. Because of Namco's interference, they felt that some parts of Phantasia's gameplay was too generic. So for the next effort, they wanted to create a much deeper experience for gamers to immerse themselves in. This effort would result in their very first game, Star Ocean, a science fiction heavy JRPG. By the way, it was published by the before-mentioned Enix. Interesting. Like Tales of Phantasia, Star Ocean would also push the Super Famicom to its limits. And it's pretty obvious that the games come from the same family. I mean, just look at this comparison. It's pretty plain as day. Honestly, it is still surprising to us that Namco just didn't outright sue them. But in any event, Star Ocean would go on to find its own niche audience, and the series continues on to this very day.
And number 1, it was in an issue of Nintendo Power. Oh, what could have been. Now, as we mentioned earlier, Tales of Phantasia made its North American big splash in 2006 on the Game Boy Advance. So imagine our general surprise when it was actually in an issue of Nintendo Power a few months after the game's initial release on the Super Famicom. But there it was, issue 82, hitting store shelves in March of 1996. Now, just because a game was in an article of Nintendo Power was not a guarantee that it was going to come stateside. A good example of this is Godzilla Destroy All Monsters. I still get a twinge in the rage nerve of my brain every time I think of that. Damn you, Nintendo Power, you lied to me! But just imagine if it did. It is possible that gamers nowadays would look back on Phantasia more fondly, like they do for other JRPGs that came out during the time, like Secret of Mana, Chrono Trigger, and of course Final Fantasy III. Perhaps the Tales series would be more popular now than it is, if it only came out on the Super Nintendo way back when. And that's our list. Make sure to like and leave a comment down below.
That's right. You've been watching thebrotherhoodgaming.com. Now be sure to hit that notification bell if you want to see updates from our channel in the future. And of course, don't forget to subscribe as well. See you next time, viewers.